Have you ever run so hard after something that somewhere in the middle of the race you forgot why you were running? We are taught from the moment we can speak that life is a competition, that love has to be won, that success has to be hunted down, that peace, real, lasting peace, is the prize waiting at the finish line for the person who wants it badly enough. And so we run. We run after careers that keep moving the goalposts. We run after relationships that keep slipping through our fingers. We run after versions of ourselves that somehow never show up, no matter how many 5 a.m. alarms we set, no matter how many vision boards we make, no matter how much we sacrifice on the altar of someday. And in the quiet moments, in the space between the noise, when the music stops and the phone is face down, and it's just you and the ceiling at 2 in the morning, you've asked yourself the question, the one you've been afraid to ask out loud. What if I'm doing this completely wrong? What if the very act of chasing is exactly what keeps the thing you want just out of reach? Stay with me. We are going to dismantle the myth of the chase. We are going to walk through some of the most powerful wisdom ever recorded in human history. Ancient, tested, fire-forged wisdom. And we are going to answer a question that most people spend their entire lives running too fast to ask. Not, how do I get what I want, but how do I become the kind of person who no longer has to chase it?
Here is something the world never told you. Something buried beneath every productivity hack, every motivational poster, every rise and grind reel you've ever scrolled past at midnight. The hustle culture you were raised on. The one that told you if you want it badly enough, if you work hard enough, if you just don't stop, it was only ever telling you half the story. The half it left out is the one that changes everything. Look at the people who won the race. Really look at them. The ones who got the money, the title, the relationship, the body, the ones who got everything on the checklist. Look closely. Are they at peace? Are they resting? Are they finally, genuinely still? Or are they already chasing the next thing? Because here is the brutal truth about chasing that nobody puts on a poster. When you chase something, when you desperately need it, when your worth rides on it, when your peace is hostage to whether or not it shows up, you send a signal to the people around you, to the opportunities in front of you, to the deepest part of yourself. The signal says, I am incomplete without this. In the world, whether you want to call it the universe, human psychology, or simply the physics of how people respond to each other, the world steps back. Because nobody is drawn to desperation. No opportunity rushes toward panic. No love deepens under the weight of being someone's only lifeline. Desperation repels the very thing it reaches for. Think about that for a moment. Think about the job you over-prepared for, the one you rehearsed in the mirror and lost sleep over for a week, versus the one you walked into relaxed, genuinely interested, already at peace with either outcome. Which one felt easier? Think about the person whose attention you desperately craved versus the moment you genuinely stopped needing it. Was it a coincidence that the moment you let go was almost always the moment they came back? This is not magic. This is not manifesting or wishing thinking dressed up in ancient clothes. This is something the Stoics understood over 2,000 years ago with a clarity that still cuts through all the noise. It is the physics of the human spirit. And once you understand it, truly understand it, not just intellectually, but in your bones, nothing will ever look the same. I want you to picture a lion. When a lion hunts, it expends a tremendous amount of energy. Every sprint is a calculated risk. If the hunt fails, it goes hungry. There is real cost in every chase. But here's what you need to understand about the lion. It doesn't hunt 24 hours a day. It doesn't chase simply because it can. It doesn't stalk prey out of anxiety or the fear that the herd might disappear. The rest of the time, the vast majority of its time, the lion lies in the shade. It grooms itself. It rests. It exists in its power without constantly performing that power for the world to see. The lion only hunts when it's ready, when the conditions are right, when it is conserved enough to give everything in that single, precise, committed moment. Now, look at how most of us are living. We are hunting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We are hunting for likes on a screen, for validation from strangers, for a promotion from someone who doesn't know our name, for someone, anyone, to finally look at us and say, "You are enough." We never stop. We never rest in our power because somewhere along the way, we stopped believing we had any. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, commander of armies, the most powerful man alive during his reign, wrote these words privately in a journal he never intended for anyone to read. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't writing a battle strategy. He wasn't talking about conquering more territory. He was writing about the only conquest that has ever truly mattered, the one within. Let me tell you about a man. His name is David. David is smart. David is ambitious. David grew up watching his father work 2 jobs just to keep the lights on, and he made a promise to himself, a silent, burning promise, that his life would be different, that he would not be his father, that he would make it. And so David chased. He chased the career, 70-hour weeks, skipped holidays, missed his sister's wedding because there was a deadline, chased promotions, got them, chased bigger ones, set new targets, moved the goalposts himself because standing still felt like dying. He chased relationships the same way. He was attentive, maybe too attentive. He texted back instantly, always. He reshaped himself into whatever he thought the other person wanted. He tried so desperately to be enough, to hold on, that he squeezed every relationship until it collapsed under the pressure of his need. One by one, they left, and with every departure, he ran harder. He chased happiness too, the car, the apartment on the 34th floor with the view he always wanted, the watch, the clothes. He posted the photos, he got the likes, he sat with the phone in his hand and waited for the feeling. It never came. One evening, David is sitting in the kind of apartment he used to dream about. The city glitters below him like something out of a movie. He has everything on the list, everything he ran toward for 15 years, and he feels nothing. Here is the part that will haunt you. David is not a fictional character. David is every person who has ever confused movement with progress. Every person who has ever run so fast that they never stopped to ask why they were running. Every person who has ever climbed to the summit and stood there, breathless, looking at the view, and felt nothing but the hollow echo of everything they sacrificed to get there. David is, at some point in our lives, all of us. And the question the Stoics would ask David, not, "Why didn't you want more?" Not, "Why didn't you try harder?" The question is far simpler and far more devastating. What were you running from?
Around 300 BCE, in the open marketplace of ancient Athens, a philosopher named Zeno of Citium began teaching a new way of thinking about human life. He didn't teach from a throne. He didn't teach behind locked gates to the wealthy or the elite. He walked out into the public square, beneath a painted porch, the Stoa Poikile, and he taught to anyone who would stop and listen. And what he taught was radical. He said, most of what you suffer in this life is not caused by what happens to you. It is caused by what you demand from life. The Stoics believed the universe operated according to a deep, rational order, a logos, they called it, a natural current beneath all of existence. And within that current, there were only 2 categories of things: things within your control and things outside of it. That's it. That is the entire framework. Your thoughts, your choices, your effort, your values, your response to what happens, these are yours, unconditionally, irrevocably yours. Everything else, the weather, other people's opinions, whether someone loves you back, whether the market crashes, whether fate decides to test you, not yours, never was, never will be. And here is where Stoicism becomes revolutionary. The moment you stop pouring your energy into what was never yours to control, the moment you genuinely, deeply release it, something extraordinary happens. You stop suffering for it. Epictetus said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." This was not a man speaking from a life of comfort. Epictetus was born into slavery. He was physically crippled. His leg was deliberately broken by his master as a demonstration of power. He had every reason in the world to feel crushed by the weight of what he couldn't control. And yet he built one of the most powerful philosophies of freedom ever written. Because he understood something that most free people never learn. Freedom is not a circumstance. Freedom is a practice. And the most free a human being can ever be is the moment they stop needing the external world to cooperate in order to find peace. But let me be clear, because this is the point where most people misunderstand Stoicism, and the misunderstanding costs them everything. Stoicism is not passivity. It is not sitting on a couch in quiet resignation, lighting incense and waiting for your dreams to knock on the door. That is not Stoicism. That is avoidance dressed up in philosophy. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor. Seneca was a statesman and playwright of legendary influence. Epictetus, a former slave, built a school that taught some of the greatest minds of the ancient world. These were the most active, most engaged, most fully alive people in their societies. What made them Stoic was not that they did less, it was that they worked without the desperation. They engaged without the attachment. They gave everything, and then they released the outcome with open hands and a steady heart. That distinction is everything, and we will come back to it.
I want to tell you something about gardeners. A wise gardener, someone who truly understands how growth works, never stands over the soil and screams at seeds. They never dig up the bulb every 3 days to check if it's sprouting, because they know the excavation itself destroys the root. They never pour a month's worth of water onto the soil in a single desperate afternoon, because impatience masquerading as effort is still just impatience. A wise gardener prepares the soil. They pull the weeds that steal nutrients. They test the pH. They till the earth carefully, deliberately, until it is ready to receive. They plant with intention, water with discipline, and then they do something that requires more courage than any of the other steps. They walk away. They trust the process. They return each morning not in panic, not gripping the fence, not scanning the earth for proof that their effort was worth it, but with quiet curiosity. The garden reveals itself on nature's timeline, not theirs. You are the gardener of your own life, and your soul is the soil. Everything you want, the love, the success, the peace, the sense of purpose, these are seeds. And seeds do not respond to desperation. They do not grow faster because you need them to. They do not bloom because you cried over them at 2 in the morning. They grow because you made the soil worthy of growth. The Stoics had a word for the state the gardener lives in while waiting: eusimia, tranquility of the soul, a steady inner current that doesn't get swept away by every slow season, every cold night, every morning when nothing appears to have changed. It is not shallow happiness. It is not toxic positivity. It is not pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It is the settled, unshakable knowledge that you have done your part, that you have prepared the soil, that what is meant for you is underground, forming, becoming, and it will not be rushed and it will not be lost. That knowledge, held in the body, not just the mind, is itself the most powerful condition for growth.
Lesson 1. The Dichotomy of Control. Stop bleeding energy. The single greatest energy drain in most people's lives is not their schedule, it is not their workload, it is not even their problems. It is the enormous, relentless, invisible amount of mental and emotional energy they pour every single day into things they have absolutely no power to change. Think about how much of your inner life is consumed by this. You replay conversations that already happened 3 days ago, crafting the perfect response to someone who has already moved on. You imagine, in excruciating detail, what someone else is thinking about you, what they meant, whether they're still angry, whether they still care, whether you said the wrong thing at dinner last Thursday. You worry about the economy, about the future of the world, about a trajectory that has never once paused to ask for your anxiety about it. You lie awake at night chasing certainty in a world that has never once offered it. And in doing so, you scatter yourself. You leak. You spread your energy so thin across so many things you cannot control that when it comes time to invest in the one thing that actually matters, your mind, your choices, your character, your response, you have almost nothing left. The Stoics called the faculty of free choice prohairesis, the one thing that is always, unconditionally, inalterably yours. No emperor can take it. No disaster can strip it. No rejection can dissolve it. It is the most sovereign possession a human being can have, and most of us are too busy worrying about the weather to remember we own it. Here is the practice the Stoics actually used, every single morning, without exception. They divided their concerns into 2 columns. Column 1, what can I control today? My attitude, my words, my effort, my honesty, my integrity, how I respond to whatever comes through the door. Column 2, what can I not control? Everything else. And then, and this is the step we always skip, they would look at column 2, breathe, and consciously, deliberately place it outside of their circle of concern. Not ignore it, not pretend it doesn't exist, not stuff it into a box and label it fine. Release it. Place it back in the hands of fate, of nature, of the logos, of whatever you want to call the order of things that is larger and older and wiser than any individual human life. And then they returned, completely, totally, to column 1. Seneca wrote, "Cease to hope, and you will cease to fear." That sounds brutal the first time you hear it, but listen carefully. He was not saying stop wanting a beautiful life. He was not saying become numb to joy or indifferent to love. He was saying when your peace is hostage to a specific outcome, when you can only relax if this happens, when you can only breathe when that person calls, you have handed your entire inner life over to something you cannot control, and you will spend your days either hoping it arrives or fearing it won't. That is not freedom. That is a cage you built yourself. The Stoic way is not cold. It is not detached. It is deeply alive. It says, want things, work toward things, care deeply, love fully, but hold them the way you'd hold a bird, gently enough that it can breathe, and loosely enough that if it needs to fly, you open your hand. Because what truly belongs to you will always return, and what leaves when you open your hand was never yours to keep. When you internalize this, not just intellectually as a clever idea, but in your body, in your nervous system, in the way you wake up in the morning, something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop leaking. You become whole. And a whole person, someone who has gathered their scattered energy back into themselves, who is no longer hemorrhaging attention across 100 things they cannot change. that person walks into a room differently. They are not performing. They are not scanning for approval. They are not broadcasting their insecurity in the frequency of their smile. They simply are. And a person who simply is, completely, fully, without apology, is, without trying to be, the most magnetic presence in any space they enter.
There is another story I want to tell you. This one is different from David's. There was a man, let's call him James. James fell completely in love with a woman. Not the comfortable, easy kind of love. The devastating kind. The kind that reorganizes your entire life around a single person without your permission. He was consumed. He wrote messages he never sent. He showed up places she might be. He changed his clothes, his music, his opinions about things he'd held for years, all in the quiet, desperate hope that he could become the man she wanted him to be. And the more he chased, the more she drifted. Not because she was cruel, because desperation has a smell, and it doesn't smell like love. It smells like need, like fear, like someone reaching for you not because they have something to offer, but because they are drowning and you are the only thing they can see to grab onto. James felt her pulling away, and so he reached harder, tried more, reshaped himself further, until one day he looked in the mirror and realized he had no idea who he was anymore. He had become a ghost of himself, sculpted entirely by someone else's preferences, living entirely for someone else's attention, with nothing left of his own soul to offer. A friend gave him a copy of Epictetus. He read it in one sitting on a Tuesday night, sitting on the floor of his apartment with a cold cup of coffee, and he discovered a concept the Stoics called apatheia. Not apathy as in numbness, not apathy as in giving up, apatheia as in not being consumed by the hurricane of external passions, not being swept away by the desperate animal hunger for things you cannot control. The ability to want without being destroyed by the wanting. James put the phone down. Not dramatically, not as a tactic, not as a strategy to get her back. He put it down because for the first time in months, he understood that the person he had been trying to become, the constantly available, perfectly shaped, permanently attentive ghost, was not a man. It was a mirror, and mirrors don't have lives worth living. So, he stopped. He started running again, not to look better, to feel something real. He called an old friend he'd abandoned in the obsession. He started working on a project he'd shelved for 2 years. He started saying no to things that didn't serve him, and yes to things that lit him up, regardless of whether she would find it impressive. He stopped looking at his phone. He stopped hoping. Weeks later, he ran into her at a coffee shop. He was polite, warm, but he had somewhere to be. He had a life happening. He no longer needed her to complete him. And something wild happened in that moment. She could feel it. It came off him like heat from a fire. She asked him what had changed. He smiled and said, "I stopped running." And within a month, she found her way back. Now, I want to be careful here, because that is not the point. The point is not that stopping the chase gets you the girl or the job or the life. The point is what James discovered in the months he stopped chasing. He had become someone worth chasing. The relationship was almost secondary. What mattered was that James came home to himself. And a person who is at home in themselves, who needs nothing from the room to feel complete, that person in any room is the only version of themselves that anyone else can genuinely love. The physics of the vortex. Let's talk physics for a moment. A vortex, whether it's a tornado, a whirlpool, or a spiral galaxy, does not move toward things. It stays still. And its power is so total, so complete, so absolute in its own nature, that it pulls everything around it inward without taking a single step. A vortex doesn't chase, it becomes the center of gravity. And this is exactly what the Stoics were describing 2,000 years before the word psychology existed. When you are constantly chasing success, you appear desperate to employers, to collaborators, to the very opportunities you're pursuing. When you are constantly chasing love, you appear suffocating, not because you're a bad person, but because need reads as danger. When you are constantly chasing happiness, it stays one step ahead, because happiness is a byproduct, not a destination. But when you stop chasing, when you turn inward, build your mind, discipline your body, deepen your values, root yourself in purpose, you become the vortex. You become the gravitational center. And the things that are right for you, the people, the work, the life, they spiral inward. Not because you tricked the universe, not because you performed non-attachment as a strategy, because you became something worth orbiting. Lesson 2. Virtue as the magnet. Become what you want to attract. Marcus Aurelius was emperor of the most powerful civilization the ancient world had ever known. He commanded legions, he negotiated with kings, he presided over a court filled with treachery, manipulation, and men who spent their every waking moment scheming to increase their standing. You know what he wrote about? Alone, by candlelight, in the pages of what we now call the Meditations, a private journal he never intended for anyone to read. He didn't write about tactics. He didn't write about enemies to defeat or empires to expand. He wrote, page after page, year after year, through war and illness and loss, about how to be better, more patient, more honest, more just, more present with the people directly in front of him. He wrote, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, not your circumstances, not the loyalty of those around you, not the success of your campaigns, the quality of your thoughts. You may have heard the phrase, you attract what you are, not what you want. Most people hear that and roll their eyes because it sounds like something printed on a throw pillow. But there is a devastating, verifiable truth buried inside it. When your choices come from fear, when you operate from scarcity, from lack, from the constant background noise of, I am not enough, you project that frequency outward, and people feel it. Not always consciously, they can't always name it, they can't always articulate why someone who seems perfectly composed feels somehow off, but they feel it. The grip that's slightly too tight, the laugh that's slightly too eager, the eye contact that searches just a little too hard for proof that you're okay. These are the signals of someone who has not yet come home to themselves. And no achievement will fix it, no relationship will fill it, no external validation will silence it, because the signal doesn't come from your circumstances, it comes from the quality of your relationship with yourself. Now here is the Stoic secret. Virtue, the Greek concept of arete, meaning excellence of character, was not, to the Stoics, merely a moral obligation. It was a strategic one. When you are honest, you don't have to track your lies. When you are disciplined, temptation loses its power, not because you resist it through white-knuckled willpower, but because you have built a self that doesn't need what it's offering. When you are genuinely kind, not kind because I want something, but kind as an expression of who you are, you create an atmosphere that people lean into. When you have the courage to walk away from what diminishes you, the relationship that keeps shrinking you, the work that keeps deadening you, the company of people who make you feel less than you are, you create space. And space in Stoic philosophy is not emptiness. Space is an invitation. The Stoics believed
that when your inner world is ordered, when you are genuinely living in alignment with your deepest values, the outer world cannot help but begin to reflect that back. Not immediately, not without difficulty, not in a straight, uninterrupted line, but inevitably. Because the person you become through the daily practice of virtuous living is the very person who deserves, and therefore, in time, receives what you were chasing all along. Epictetus wrote, "Curb your desire, don't set your heart on so many things, and you will get what you need." This is not about wanting less, this is about wanting rightly. Wanting from a place of wholeness rather than lack. Wanting things because they align with your values and your deepest purpose, not because you think they'll finally make you feel enough. When you want from wholeness, you work toward things without being destroyed if they don't arrive on schedule. When you work from peace, you are effective in ways that anxious striving never, ever allows. And when you are effective from peace, what you deserve finds its way to you. Not always through the door you expected, not always wearing the face you imagined, but it finds you.
The moon and the tide. The moon doesn't chase the tide. Think about that. The moon, one of the largest gravitational forces in our solar system, doesn't rush. It doesn't plead. It doesn't alter its orbit to make the ocean cooperate. It doesn't send the sea a message asking if they're still connected. It simply is. Constant, present, radiant in its own light. And because it is so completely and unapologetically itself, because it holds its position with total, uncompromising integrity, entire oceans move in response. You were never meant to chase. You were meant to become so completely yourself, so rooted in your own truth, so clear in your own light that the right things are pulled toward you the way water is pulled toward the moon. Not because you're perfect, not because you figured everything out, not because you've achieved some enlightened state of spiritual completion, but because you are present, because you have stopped dimming your own light, trying to become something someone else needed you to be. This is not poetry. This is psychology. This is physics. This is 2,000 years of accumulated human wisdom, confirmed by every person who has ever stopped performing, stopped pretending, stopped running from themselves, and discovered, sometimes with shock, sometimes with tears, that the person they already were was more than enough. Lesson 3. Amor Fati, the radical art of loving what is. Now we arrive at perhaps the most powerful and the most difficult of all Stoic teachings. 2 Latin words, Amor Fati, love of fate. Not acceptance, not resignation, not, I suppose this is fine. Love. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." With all your heart. Not with gritted teeth, not with one eye on the exit, not with the silent resentment of someone who is settled for less than they wanted. With everything. Here is what this means for every person who has been chasing. Every rejection you ever received, every door that closed in your face, every relationship that ended, every opportunity that passed you by, every season when nothing seemed to grow no matter how hard you worked, those were not punishments. Those were redirections. I know how that sounds. It is easy to say it happened for a reason from the other side, standing in the sunlight looking back at the dark. It is a completely different thing to believe it in the middle of the night when you're exhausted and lost and you've started over for the 4th time and you genuinely don't know if you have another round in you. I'm not going to pretend the Stoics never suffered. Marcus Aurelius lost children. He spent nearly his entire reign at war. He was betrayed by people he loved and trusted.
He suffered illness for most of his adult life. Epictetus was a slave. He was physically tortured by a man who owned him. He had nothing, and yet he built a philosophy of freedom so complete that 2,000 years later it is still changing lives. Seneca was exiled, humiliated, impoverished, and ultimately forced to take his own life at the command of an emperor he had once served faithfully. These were not men whose wisdom came from comfortable lives. It came from the fire. And what they found in the fire, what they kept returning to, kept writing about, kept teaching to anyone who would listen, is this: the obstacle is not in the way. The obstacle is the way. The Japanese have an art form called kintsugi, the practice of repairing broken pottery with gold. The cracks are not hidden. They are not filled in and painted over to make the piece look like it was never broken. The gold goes into the cracks, and the broken, repaired piece becomes more valuable, more beautiful, more unique, more visible than the unbroken version ever was. The Stoics would have loved this, because they understood that a person who has been broken and rebuilt, not in spite of the fractures, but through them, is stronger, more beautiful, more magnetic than someone who has never been truly tested. Amor Fati is not about pretending the pain wasn't real. It is about choosing, deliberately, with full awareness of what you're choosing, to find the gold in it anyway. And when you reach the extraordinary, hard-won place where you can look at what was taken from you and say, genuinely say, I would not trade this because it made me who I am, something shifts. Not in the world around you, not immediately, not obviously, in you. A quietness settles in, a sense of inner sovereignty that has nothing to do with what you have or haven't achieved. A bone-deep knowledge that you are not at the mercy of what happens to you, that you are ultimately its author. And from that place, only from that place, you stop chasing, and things begin to come.
Lesson 4. The still water principle. Depth attracts, noise repels. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Time is a river made up of the events which happen, a violent stream. For as soon as a thing has been seen, it is carried away, and another comes in its place, and this too will be carried away." The river never stops moving. The person who panics in the current, who thrashes and fights and desperately grabs for the bank, exhausts themselves and gets carried downstream. The person who understands the current, who moves with it, who trusts it, who knows that rivers always go somewhere, they navigate. They flow. Think about the most powerful people you have ever encountered. Not the loudest, not the most aggressive, not the ones who dominated every room with their volume. The most powerful ones. Every mentor who changed your life. Every teacher who said one sentence that you still carry with you. Every person whose presence made you feel immediately calmer, more seen, more like yourself than you were before they walked in. Were they frantically performing? Were they broadcasting their achievements? Were they scanning the room for proof that they were being taken seriously? No. They were still. Not passive, not disengaged, not absent. Still. There is a profound difference between stillness and passivity that most people never understand. Turbulent water shows you only the surface, foam, noise, movement. You cannot see through it. You cannot find the bottom. But still, deep water? You can see all the way to the floor. That depth, that visible, readable depth is what people are drawn to. When you are no longer performing for approval, no longer frantically proving yourself to a world that wasn't asking, people stop and lean in. They don't always know why, they can't always name it, but they feel the pull. Because stillness in a world of constant noise is the rarest and most powerful form of magnetism. And this is what all of Stoic philosophy was building toward. Not detachment from life,
not the cold withdrawal of someone who has given up feeling. Engaged stillness, the ability to be fully present, fully alive, fully invested in the work, while remaining completely unshaken by the outcome. To care deeply, without needing. To work with everything you have, without grasping. To show up completely, without requiring anything in return. This is not a small thing. This, in many ways, is the hardest thing a human being can learn to do. But here is the beautiful paradox sitting at the heart of all of it. The moment you are no longer hungry for what you are chasing, the moment you have found enough peace in your own company, enough purpose in your own work, enough love in your own heart, that the absence of what you wanted stops feeling like an open wound. That is almost always the exact moment it arrives. Not because the universe rewards non-attachment like some cosmic game show, but because you have become, finally and genuinely, the kind of person who is ready to receive it.
The transformation. What happens when you stop? Let's go back to David. Remember him? The man sitting alone at the top of everything he'd ever wanted, feeling nothing? Here is what happened next. David hit what the Stoics called the turning point. The moment when the cost of continuing is undeniably clearly higher than the cost of changing. The moment the ground beneath the old life finally gives way. He stopped. Not his ambition, not his desire for a good life. He stopped chasing. He stopped running. He sat down, not in defeat, but in genuine inquiry, and he asked himself questions he had been too afraid to ask for 15 years. Who am I when I'm not performing? What do I actually value, stripped of what I thought I was supposed to want? What would I do tomorrow if I knew for certain that no one was watching and no one would be impressed? And in the silence that followed those questions, not immediately, not neatly, something began to emerge. Not answers at first, just a quiet, a settling. He started reading philosophy, history, the books he'd always dismissed as impractical and unproductive. He started moving his body not to look a certain way, but because it made him feel alive in a way that nothing on his career path ever had. He started having conversations with no agenda, just the genuine pleasure of thinking alongside another human being. He showed up to work not to impress anyone, but because he actually cared about doing the work well, not for approval, for its own sake. He stopped texting people who made him feel like he had to earn their presence. He stopped apologizing for taking up space. He stopped making himself smaller to fit into rooms that didn't deserve his full self. And here is what happened. The work he'd actually wanted for years, not the status symbol, but the work he genuinely cared about, found him. A connection he'd made months earlier, not strategically but genuinely, had been paying quiet attention. When the right moment came, the door opened from the other side. The relationship that finally felt real arrived when he had genuinely stopped searching for someone to complete him and had started simply enjoying his own company enough that he had something real and full and alive to offer. The peace he'd spent 15 years purchasing with expensive things arrived quietly one morning. No fanfare, no announcement, just the realization, over a cup of coffee in the early light, watching the city wake up below him, that he was, for the first time in as long as he could remember, completely at home inside himself. None of it happened because David got lucky. It happened because David got whole. And whole people don't chase. They don't need to. They become. And what is meant for them finds its way home.
The Stoic practice. 5 things you can do today. Let's make this practical. Because Stoicism was never designed to be an abstract philosophy to admire from a distance. It was always a practice, a daily discipline, a set of habits for the mind that repeated over months and years
Build the kind of character that attracts instead of chases. Here are the 5 things the Stoics actually practiced. 5 things you can begin today. The first practice, the morning audit. Every morning, before the noise of the world, before the phone, before the news and the demands and the 1,000 things pulling for your attention, take 5 minutes. Close your eyes or open a journal and ask yourself 3 questions. What can I control today? What can I not control? And which of those 2 am I going to invest my energy in? Then, this is non-negotiable. Deliberately release column 2. Place it outside of your circle. Not with frustration, not with resentment, with something closer to gratitude. This is not mine to carry, and I am not obligated to carry it. This is not a spiritual exercise. It is cognitive triage, and when practiced consistently, it changes the character of an entire day. The second practice, the virtue question. Before any significant decision today, in your work, in your relationships, in how you spend your time, ask not, what do I want from this, but who do I want to be in this? Do you want to be the person who sends the desperate message at midnight, or the person who trusts that what is truly meant for them does not require begging? Do you want to be the person who cuts corners because the pressure is high, or the person who does the right thing quietly when no one is watching, simply because that is who they are? Your answer to that question, repeated daily over months and years, is the architecture of your character. In your character, the Stoics believed, is your destiny. The third practice, negative visualization. This one feels counterintuitive, but stay with me. The Stoics regularly practiced imagining the loss of the things they valued most, not as an exercise in pessimism, not to torture themselves with worst-case scenarios, but to do 2 things simultaneously. First, to genuinely appreciate what they had in this moment before it changes or disappears. Second, to remove the paralyzing terror of potential loss. When you are no longer shaking with the fear of losing something, you hold it more freely, you enjoy it more fully. And when you hold it freely, with open hands and a steady heart, it no longer needs to escape your grip in order to breathe. Seneca wrote, "Nothing is so bitter that a calm mind can find comfort in it." Negative visualization builds that calm. It inoculates you against despair. It turns what might have been panic into gratitude, and gratitude is one of the most powerful states a human being can inhabit. The fourth practice, act without attachment to outcome. This is the hardest one, and the most liberating. Do the work, give it absolutely everything, be the most prepared person in the room, care deeply, and then release the outcome entirely. Not because it doesn't matter, but because your job was never to guarantee the outcome, it was to be worthy of it. The Stoics called this the reserve clause, acting with full intention, full effort, full commitment, but always with the silent internal addition, unless something otherwise prevents it. Not as an excuse, not as an escape hatch, as a freedom. Because when you have given your best and the outcome still doesn't arrive the way you hoped, you don't collapse, you don't spiral into self-interrogation, you don't start questioning whether you are fundamentally broken. You say, I did my part, the rest belongs to nature, and you begin again. The fifth practice, and perhaps the most important, return to yourself. Every time you catch yourself scanning a room for approval, every time you shrink your posture to seem less threatening, every time you over-explain, over-apologize, or perform for an audience that didn't ask for a show, stop, take one breath, and come back. Come back to what Marcus Aurelius returned to every single day in the privacy of his journal. The commitment to be just, to be honest, to be present, to be himself, regardless of the chaos outside. That return, that quiet, disciplined, daily return to self. That is the practice. That is the whole practice. And every blessing, every connection, every achievement that actually means something, it flows as a natural consequence from that return.
The fire within. In Stoic philosophy, the ideal is not to be a wall, cold, impenetrable, untouchable. That is not strength, that is fear hardened into stone. The ideal is to be a fire. A fire does not chase the logs are brought to it. A fire does not chase the people lost in the dark. They are drawn to its warmth, its light, its life. But a fire also has edges. If you come too close without respect, it burns. If you try to smother it, it consumes whatever is smothering it. A fire is warm, and a fire is dangerous. When you build yourself into a person of high character, when you are honest without cruelty, kind without weakness, present without desperation, disciplined without rigidity, you become something that people are instinctively drawn to. Not because you are performing some curated version of magnetism, because you are real, because you are whole, because in a world of people anxiously performing for each other, a person who is simply and completely themselves is so rare that they become impossible to ignore. And this is what belongs to you will find you really means. It means that when you align with your truest nature, when you strip away the false desires, the borrowed ambitions, the endless performance of a self you borrowed from someone else's idea of success, you vibrate at a different frequency. There are people in this world tuned to your specific frequency. There are opportunities that fit your specific gifts. There is a life waiting. Not the life you saw on someone else's timeline, not the life you chased because you thought you were supposed to want it, but the life that fits who you actually are. And you will never meet that life as long as you are wearing the mask of the chaser. You will never find it as long as you are running in the wrong direction. But the moment you stop competing, the moment you stop trying to be everyone else's version of enough, you become something no competition can touch. You become the only version of you, and there is no competition for the original. You have spent enough of your life running. Your legs are tired. Your heart is weary. The finish line keeps moving, and you are beginning to understand in the deepest part of yourself that it always will. Stop chasing the shadows on the wall. Turn around. Build the fire within. Remember what we said about the fire earlier? That a fire doesn't chase the logs are brought to it? That a fire doesn't chase the lost, they are drawn to its warmth? But a fire does something else too. A fire transforms. Everything it consumes becomes part of its light. The hard seasons you survived, they become fuel. The people who left, they become heat. The dreams that died, they become embers that keep you warm through the coldest nights. You are not broken by what you've been through. You are seasoned, cured, ready. Let your light shine, not because anyone told you to, not because you want something in return, but because you were made to, because hiding it would be a betrayal of everything the fire has cost you to build. And then watch. Watch the people who are meant for you find you in the crowd, not because you called out to them, because they felt the warmth from across the room and followed it home. Watch the work that fits your soul appear at your feet, not because you begged for it, because work that matters is drawn to the person who does work that matters. Watch the peace you have been hunting for your entire life settle gently on your shoulders like an old friend who was waiting, patiently, silently, lovingly, for you to stand still long enough to be found. What belongs to you will simply find you, not because you ran faster than everyone else, but because you finally stood still and became impossible to ignore. Marcus Aurelius wrote in the quiet of the night after one of the most grueling days an emperor ever faced, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." 4 words for receiving, 4 for releasing. An entire philosophy of life in 8 words.
Receive what comes with gratitude, not clinging, not clutching, not building a cage around it out of fear. Let go of what leaves with grace, not grief, not bitterness, not the long, corrosive ache of someone who never learned to open their hands. And in between, in the sacred, irreplaceable space between what arrives and what departs, live, fully, freely, without apology. If something in this video stirred you, if something shifted, if something quietly broke open, if you felt the faintest warmth of a fire you'd forgotten you were carrying, then maybe it found you for a reason. You were not made to chase. You were made to become. And what is truly yours, the love, the purpose, the belonging, the peace you have been searching for your whole life, it has your name on it. It always did. It's waiting. Stand still. Build yourself into someone worthy of it, and let it find its way home.